and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs. You have a choice.
You can feel right away, this is not just a routine briefing. This is messaging. Carefully constructed, layered with intent. It starts casually, almost conversational. But underneath that tone, there's a clear objective. Shape perception. Control the narrative. Define what this operation means before anyone else does. Notice even the hesitation around the word war. That alone tells you. This is as much about optics as it is about action. And then comes the praise, the framing of success, the idea that everything is not just going well, but historically decisive. And that's where it gets interesting, because when language becomes absolute, it's no longer just reporting reality. It's constructing it. Watch closely, because this moment reveals far more than just a military update.
Pete, do you want to give about a 3-minute statement on how we're doing in this, as I call it, military operation? People don't like me using the word war, but so I won't. But the Democrats go to war. How about a little statement? I think he's done a very good job. Do we agree he's done a good job, Mark? What? Can we take some of your time?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. You're spot on. Never in history has a modern military, Iran had a modern military, a modern navy, a modern air force, modern air defenses, leadership, massive bunker. Never has a modern military been so rapidly and historically obliterated, defeated, from day one with overwhelming firepower. The air campaign that we've conducted, that Israel's conducted alongside us, was one for the history books, truly. And it's because we have a president of the United States that when he sends his warfighters out to fight, he unties their hands to actually go out and close with and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran, as the president talked about your future. The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved on that battlefield. This is not Iraq and Afghanistan. This is not a president who's interested in vague end states. He's been very clear with us about what we need to accomplish, creating the conditions for them never to have a nuclear capability, and that's exactly what we're doing in historic fashion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. President, you know, the only two people that were quite disappointed, I don't want to say this, but I have to. I said, Pete and General Raisin Kane, I think this thing's going to be settled very soon. Here they go. Oh, that's too bad. Pete didn't want it to be settled. It's these guys are doing a great job. That's a good attitude, though, Tom, right? They were not interested in settlement. They were interested in just winning this thing.
What stands out first is the precision of language, and at the same time, the contradiction within it. On one hand, there's an effort to avoid calling it a war. On the other, there's open discussion of overwhelming force, destruction, and total military dominance. That duality is strategic. It allows flexibility in public perception, keeping the intensity while softening the label. Then you move into the core of the statement, and it's unmistakable. This is maximalist framing. Never in history. Rapidly obliterated. Overwhelming firepower. These are not neutral descriptions. They are designed to project inevitability, to signal that the outcome is not just success, but total control. And when you frame something as already decisive, you reduce space for doubt, for scrutiny, for alternative interpretations. Another key moment, and arguably the most revealing, is the phrase about negotiating with bombs. That line reframes diplomacy entirely. It shifts it from dialogue to enforcement. It tells both domestic and international audiences that negotiation is happening, but on very specific terms, terms defined by pressure and sustained military capability. And psychologically, that has weight. To supporters, it signals strength, decisiveness, clarity of purpose. To critics, it raises questions about escalation, about long-term consequences. And then there's the deliberate distancing from past conflicts. This is not Iraq and Afghanistan. That line is doing more than comparing. It's preempting criticism. It's addressing the fear of prolonged, unclear engagements. Before that concern is even voiced, it reassures the audience this is different, more focused, more controlled. But then comes a subtle shift in tone, and it's easy to miss if you're not listening closely. The moment where settlement is almost framed as disappointing. It's delivered with humour, but the implication is real. The emphasis is not on resolution, it's on winning. And that distinction matters, because resolution suggests compromise, mutual agreement, while winning suggests dominance, a clear victor, a clear outcome. And that difference shapes expectations. From a media perspective, this entire exchange is highly effective. It blends informality with authority, casual remarks with high-stakes messaging, which makes it more accessible, more shareable, more impactful. People engage more with something that feels unscripted, even when the messaging within it is highly deliberate. Politically, the benefits are clear. This kind of framing strengthens the image of strong leadership, decisive action, clear objectives. It appeals to audiences who value certainty, who want to see control, not ambiguity. But it also carries risk because when you frame outcomes as total and inevitable, you set expectations at a very high level. And any deviation from that, any complication, can quickly become a point of criticism. There's also the broader implication. When negotiation is framed through the lens of force, it can limit flexibility later, because shifting from dominance to compromise becomes politically harder to justify. And that's where messaging today shapes policy tomorrow. The narrative that is built in moments like this doesn't just explain actions, it constrains future decisions. So the real question becomes, does this kind of messaging create clarity and strength? Or does it narrow the path when it comes time to actually resolve the conflict? Because those are not always the same thing. What do you think? Does framing negotiation through power make outcomes more secure or more difficult to achieve? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep, clear breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe and stay with us for the next one.